Hi everyone. As you can see, St. Petersburg rests on multiple islands, and with regards to the area we are exploring this time, so for those of you who have done the other tours, you can easily find it. It's the upper section. There is a letter M, right, Gorkovskaya station at the very, very top, and a little bit to the right from the center, so that the road over there that goes all the way from the bridge is exactly the avenue we are talking about. I have also zoomed in version. The quality is not perfect, but it's enough to understand, to find the Troitsky Mosque, the Trinity Bridge. I don't know why they decided not to translate the name into English, but just use the English letters for it. But that's the avenue. And exactly thanks to this Trinity Bridge, which is the copy, the bigger version of the Alexander III Bridge in St. Peter's, in Paris. Well, exactly with the construction of this bridge, the area started to develop at a frantic pace, and it became some of the areas with the most expensive real estate. And because it was uh, early 1900s, this just happened to be the time when Art Nouveau was at its prime, and that's why there, every, I would say, second building, third building would be constructed in the same style in Art Nouveau. As you can see, the Kamenostrovsky Avenue, you see the red pin. So this island actually goes through several islands, and now we are already not on the city island, but we are on the Aptekersky, the pharmacy island, so to speak. And we're going to be switching also, we're going to be wrapping up the tour on another island. You see the island before Novaya Derevnya area, the very green one. So the avenue basically finishes there. It ends on that island, and that area is full of private homes, cottages, mansions, also built in this whimsical fantasy Art Nouveau style. But before we get there, we have some other places to explore. So let's move on. Um, if you remember, before the bridge was constructed, this area was very much, I would say, looked like a village, wilderness, where people would escape from the hustle and bustle and the noise and the smells of St. Petersburg. I remind you, and we spoke about it on Dostoevsky tours, that you could read it in many of his novels, that during summertime, living in St. Petersburg got absolutely unbearable because all the waste from the horses would be just there on the streets, and then washed into the rivers, and there was no sewage system. It was horrible. It was dirty, smelly, and stuffy, and very hot. So people try to escape, and this is where many would go. Those who have money, they could afford buying a small or building themselves a small wooden house. And that's what this area looked like up until 1903, when the Trinity Bridge would be built. And then by 1910, like within 7 years after since the bridge would be open, well, the face of the island changed significantly. That's the bridge itself, the Trinity Bridge, which we know very well. We have sailed under it, we walked on it, and the first building, however, is not as splendid as we know this avenue can be. Some buildings here still need restoration and a lot of attention, such as the building of a boarding school. Uh, this building belonged to these two aristocrats, Fyodor Sadovnikov and Sava Gerasimov. Charity was a big deal, and a lot of aristocratic families did a lot of charity. And because this avenue was a rural area, I would say, very green area up until the progress came. Many educational facilities would be built there. So it would be, small wooden homes and educational facilities such as boarding school for girls, boarding school for boys. This was the school for the poor. It was not just educational facility. It was like a temporary home and a hospital for them for those in need for children, for families with children. There was a church there, there was a hospital. Eventually, in the Soviet time, after the revolution, uh, the Soviets would open there a tuberculosis hospital. And, well, because of the tuberculosis and special, I would say, how shall I put it? Once a tuberculosis hospital is closed, you cannot just immediately open something else there or build something there on this place. There has to be a certain time period to pass before one could be building anything else there. But the thing is that well, it's been for a while now, but nobody is doing anything. I'm not sure what's going to happen to this building. No idea. But yes, unfortunately, much to my, I would say, shame, there are still buildings that have not been taken care of. And they are there, on the main avenue. You can see them, even though this is not the downtown of St. Petersburg. And maybe this is the main reason, this might be the main reason for the city authorities to keep putting off the restoration. Who knows? But yes, indeed, it's well, tourists are normally not taken to this area. I mean, they were not used there, they were not taken there, and I don't think they ever would be. So unfortunately, yes, this building looks like this. As you know, the videos that that I'm using, partly they were recorded by Misha when he visited. Partly it's my own camera roll because I filmed this area very often because I lived in this area myself. But this building is one of the exhibits of, I would say, really upscale, affluent compound. This is a huge building. It's called like the corporation of a lot of merchant families that united and commissioned to build this huge compound. And this house, we just say corporation house. This is it, just corporation house. It had everything one could dream of at that time. So it was finished by 1911, no, sorry, 1912, 1913. It's just that the building, they didn't finish all at the same time. So first one wing was open, then another wing was open. So the building goes in the shape of the letter U. So it's a big one. You can see it's a big one. So it had everything. It had electricity, telephones. It had an elevator. It even a snow melting machine, which well, it wasn't the first case of a snow melting machine, but it had a big vacuum cleaner system there. So in each apartment, okay, let me go back for a second. So in each apartment, there was a special, uh, how shall I put it, a ventilation system, and you could just attach a big hose to it and turn the vacuum cleaning on. They didn't have like any Hoover at home, but they had a big system installed and they could just plug it in from every room to vacuum the apartment. That was quite interesting. I've never seen it and I've never been inside this house, unfortunately, so it's only photos. But actually, no, I actually have been inside. There used to be a museum of history of a fan in the left wing on the ground floor. There used to be a private museum. I know it closed a couple of years ago. Not sure why, but it was a private museum and one of very few in the world that tells you the history of a fan. And this is like private collection. Well, the museum looks beautiful, and the apartments look also very impressive. These photos I found on a real estate website. So people and nowadays these apartments are all private property. So people just you know put up the photos because they want to sell their apartment on one of the popular websites that deals with real estate, and we can just you know uh, sneak into people's apartments and see. Well, for example, in this apartment, they have a beautiful fireplace in a very good condition. Or look at this stove and fireplace. I mean, pretty impressive, right? And I bet that even the floor is original. I bet the parquet floor. These are not museums, so people don't really have to keep everything as it used to be. But clearly, in this apartment, they did preserve a lot. Well, the fireplace again, and as you can see, the fireplaces are different, which means it costs even more. So putting a different fireplace in every room is definitely more expensive than putting one of the same kind. And this is just one apartment. And back in the day, the apartments could be, well, 10 rooms, 70 rooms, 20 rooms. Obviously, after the Soviet period, during the Soviet period, things were not the same way. And there also were a lot of communal apartments in this building. But this is, I don't know how many rooms are in this. I don't remember. But this is just for us to kind of imagine what it's like in this building. And now next to this building, we see a very green area. The thing is that um, we are approaching the very end of this Aptekovsky Island, or a pharmacist island. I remind you that the island was called so because um, during times of Peter the Great, so early 18th century, on this island he commissioned to start growing medicinal herbs. And this is also where the botanical garden would be eventually opened. And we visited it together, by the way, not so long ago. So this is kind of a map for you to see. So that area, the green one, is it's pretty big, and the park we're going to see is part of that big um, strip of land. Originally, this land was given by Peter the Great to Pyotr Lopukhin, who was a nobleman, who was one of the councils to Peter the Great in his administration. And this land, by the way, meant a lot to Peter the Great because here, in the beginning of St. Petersburg, happened a very important battle between the Swedish and the Russians. Um, and as a result of well, of this battle, the Swedish had to go back, and Peter's army, I would say, got the ground, gained gained ground. And after that, Peter would the common policy was to give out the plots of land to Peter's associates, so they would build their estate there and make the area, well, more beautiful, develop it, and that was a very good idea. And well, we know that Pyotr Lopukhin indeed built something on the territory, but unfortunately, there is not a single illustration, not a single image of what he built there. But we know that in the 19th century, well, okay, there is, well, okay, let's put it like that. There is one illustration, but also a lot of historians claim that it wasn't really accurate. But yes, okay, we have this illustration from 1823. However, well, the reason why we don't know what it looked like, because in the 19th century, mid-19th century, a merchant, Gromov, purchased the land, Vasily Gromov, and he built a beautiful summer residence for himself there. He also had a big home in the city center. But as I said, for the summertime, like every, I would say, um, um, a fully fledged aristocrat, he had to have a summer house there. So he purchased that land and he built himself a big summer residence, which I think, well, looked even more like, I don't know, all year round residence. That's the photo of it. It was big, it was huge, with a big garden, and part of that garden was actually open to public. The house contained, well, there were multiple smaller pavilions and construction in the garden. It had a private bay. And by the way, this river is a small Never armlet. So the main river, the Neva River, in that area splits into three armlets. I will later on show you the map. So, but this is basically the artificial island that emerged in the middle of the small Neva River. And this is a newly restored building of the Gromov Summer House. It's not Art Nouveau because it's mid-19th century, but I love this area and locals love this area. And I mean, no wonder they don't want to give this place away, easily to the visitors, to the tourists, because the park is very small. It's very quiet. Um, well, and it has beautiful views, perfect location. Um, for a long time, however, this area was pretty much abandoned. The house was neglected and looked very, I would say, it looked condemned. At some point, there was even a case when a big development company wanted to completely take down the building and um, build a big residential complex on the territory, but the locals, and you know how phlegmatic Russian people are. But this is when St. Petersburgers took to the streets. And after several weeks of big protests, eventually that company backed off, and that was it. This is when what was left of Gromov's house, and you can see that the house is not really in a very good condition in most of these old photographs. Well, mm, you can see over here even. So it's I believe 1930s or so. So the building wouldn't be looking very good. It was put in conservation, and about a couple of years ago they got down to the restoration of the building. They did the external restoration, but they still are working on the interiors because it's mostly wooden architecture. It's very problematic to restore just a wooden building. So we'll see. There are a lot of photographs. So this house was for some time also a communal building, a communal apartments, and then it was also a small research facility, and then it was closed to public. That was it. So it was just completely empty, and it stood like that for a long time. But this place remained a favorite park of the people of St. Petersburg. During Soviet period, by the way, the park was named after Felix Dzerzhinsky, who is so-called the founder of Soviet punitive system. So he is the one who developed all the prisons systems and everything. Well, yes, a lovely name for a park, right? A lovely one. There are a lot of Soviet period photographs, a lot of them, and Well, some pavilions would be eventually just destroyed with time, but some remained. And it's just waiting, for its term to be restored. But the building has been restored. And by the way, also before it became partly a residential building, it was also a restaurant. So this is the photo in the 1920s when the new economic policy was introduced and the Soviet people were allowed to run business. This was a very short-lived period that I would say boasted an incredible economic growth. But then things, as you know, would go south. This is what this house looked like about 10 years ago. This is the photo from Wikipedia, I believe. I don't remember this house looking so orange, but it was not the original color. So the original color was very similar to this one. But oh yeah, I know that now this house looks very new, which is also a little bit weird because it doesn't have to look this old, but I think just give it a little bit of time and the level of humidity will do its job. I think that it has already it has already started. So some photographs of I would say close-up photographs actually show that well, there is still some hope for the building to look as it should, I would say. A little bit worn out, a little bit worn. So from the inside, these are the photos I've been able to source from the internet. Again, I've never been inside. Well, the fireplace is still there, but the rest, yes, it doesn't look very promising. And knowing that this is wooden, mostly wooden frame, is not making things easier. So it's very problematic to restore a wooden frame building. Multiple layers of the Soviet paint, 7 layers, as you can see, all together. And well, they are planning to restore it, but we are not exactly sure to which period because, um, well, they have to kind of aim for layer 7 or at least 6, but we don't know what they will come up with. We'll see. Well, this looks beautiful. Very few original elements of the stained glass have survived. Potentially, this place can be turned into a five-star hotel, and it's a very common practice. We're going to see a building that eventually has become a five-star hotel, but not this one, not yet. We'll see what happens next. So we're looking at the small Neva armlet, Malaya Nevka, and speaking of Gromov, he also had a church. So among many other pavilions, as I said, he built himself a big summer residence. He also had a small church and a chapel. The chapel is no longer there. It was destroyed in the Soviet period. But you can see, um, what's left of it, like a small chapel. It was standing on just by the bridge. So the first bridge was constructed in the 19th century, but it was a wooden bridge, and only in the 20th century, uh, well, alongside with the Trinity Bridge construction, the wooden bridge was significantly extended. But here in this postcard, you can still see the wooden bridge, and this we are looking exactly at the Gromov's chapel and um, part of his estate, summer residence. So this is still Kamенно-Ostrovsky Bridge, which is the continuation of the Kamенно-Ostrovsky Avenue. Kamенно-Ostrovsky means Kamenny Ostrov, stone island. So Kamенно-Ostrovsky Avenue started with the Trinity Bridge and it finishes on the stone island, which is the last island we are going to explore. Um, yeah, so uh, just kind of to give you an idea. So, and yes, it was a very common case back in the in early 20th century that trains would go along the wooden bridge. That was totally okay. So there were trains there. So after the area started to develop, they would have trains there, and there are still trains. They changed their itinerary, well, the route they follow, but yes, there are still trains in St. Petersburg. So kind of for you to have an idea. So this is the map, and you can see three rivers. So the one below is a smaller Nevka. Then in the middle, that washes an island from below is the middle Nevka. And the last river from closer to the top one is the big Neva. So basically three armlets. And you can see these islands. So just you don't really need any names in English, just kind of to have an idea. And I would say that this is some of the most, I would say, gr okay, in the, let's say, city center. I'm not talking about the suburbs of St. Petersburg. I'm talking about the city limits, the proper city limits. So these are some of the most green areas, and they look really very much like paradise, I would say. So no wonder that even in the early 19th century, this area was a popular location for, summer outings, for yacht trips, and, for big, big restaurants. And there are actually several islands. So there is a big stone island and several other islands where people like to hang out, to go for the entire day, somewhere in the open air. And so people would just say, "Let's go to the islands." And when you say the islands, it actually means these this area. There are several islands altogether. We're going to talk about it shortly. But now let's cross the river over here. Oh, hold on a sec. Let me go back a little bit. Okay, once again. So to the right hand side, this is the part of the Lopuchinsky garden, right? So the Gromov summer residence. The garden is still called after Lopukhin, the first owner, but the building, the summer estate belongs to Gromov. It's Gromov's country house, but the Lopukhin garden. It's just to make things easier because I mean, who cares? Gromov, Lopukhin, doesn't matter. So we are now crossing the smaller Neva armlet. And once again, this is the Lopukhin garden. That's where we have just been to. And we are crossing to finally the stone island after which the avenue and the bridge is called. And you can clearly see the Soviet stars on the railing because this bridge was built in metal in the Soviet period only. So again, so this area is remembered from Peter's times, and before that, there used to live some Finnish pagan tribes. The name, by the way, Stone Island, is believed. Actually, we believe that this is a kind of a Russian translation of a Finnish name. The legend has it that the island was called so because next to the island there was found a big, massive stone, which was considered by these pagan tribes some sort of a shrine. But there's no information of the whereabouts of the stone. It just disappeared in the 18th century. Maybe it never existed. But uh, because so these lands were the venue for a very important battle in the Great Northern War. To remember the battle, Peter the Great planted an oak tree. Peter had a thing for oaks. He liked these trees very much. So he planted an oak tree, and this tree would be growing there until I would say um, mid 2010, something like that. I don't I haven't seen this tree, so it things were going all right up until I would say 1990s, and then the tree started to deteriorate, and it would be just standing absolutely naked in the on the alley. And eventually it just died in the 2010s, I think 2013. And then the city authorities decided to plant an acorn from that tree that they had collected some dozens of years ago. This tree is now growing on the same place where once Peter's oak used to be growing. So as you see, memory of Peter the Great means a lot to people of St. Petersburg. So it's, I mean, it's sad that Peter's oak tree is no longer there. However, in the summer garden in St. Petersburg, there is still one oak growing from Peter's times, and there is another one that is not from Peter's times, but well, mid 19th century, also a very important one. But yeah, so it's much younger than the one we have in the summer garden. So the next island, so the one that we are now about to explore, so-called Stone Island, Kamenny Ostrov, Peter gave this land to his another associate, Gavril Golovkin. Golovkin had his fingers in many pies. He was a very good politician. He was very clever, very quick on the draw, very cunning, very creative, and he managed to stay afloat even after Peter's death. As you know, many people who served to Peter, who were loyal to him, eventually after Peter's death, um, they would be, they would fall into disgrace, so to speak. Uh, but he remained, a, I would say, he remained. He actually he retained all his positions, and he remained quite an important politician and counselor during the even Empress Elizabeth, basically, which is Peter's daughter. But then he passed away, and the land would be given to Alexei Bestujev-Rюmin. He would purchase it um, from the Romanovs, basically. And he would build there a big summer residence. Same idea, right? It's just the same thing. Because Peter, even though, so Peter started this tradition, and it would be a very common practice. You buy a plot of land or you're given a plot of land, but you need to build there something. You make it beautiful. You make it an accessible point. Um, so that's what Bestujev did there. He built a summer estate with a lot of pavilions, just like Elizabeth liked it. I mean, Empress Elizabeth. So the big house, the big home with a garden, with pavilions, everything looking very uh, sim symmetrical, right? Symmetrical. And it was opulent, and Elizabeth liked it there a lot. There was a private, quay there, obviously. There was even a small theater, and people would get there just, by boats. The boats would be docked on the pier, and then they basically the party would begin just over there. There was even a Hermitage Pavilion, by the way. This is a Hermitage Pavilion that you could also access by the water. And the same thing, like in every Hermitage Pavilion in the Romanov residences, there would be two floors, and there would be a special mechanism that will enable the servants to deliver all the food, all the meals on the upper floor without actually presence of any servants on the upper floor. This the same thing. We know it already from other tours. I'm not going into details here. So Elizabeth Eventually, Bestujev-Reuben passed away. Elizabeth ruled for 20 years, so Bestujev-Reuben passed away, and Yelizaveta gave this land to her nephew, who, because she didn't have a child of her own, she didn't have any heir to the throne, so she invited her nephew, the son of her sister Anna, from uh, well, Goldstein, the province of Prussia. She invited him, and he would be the next to rule after Elizabeth's death. So he would be Peter III, and he would be given this land and the residence of Bestujev-Reuben by Elizabeth. As you know, Peter III came with his wife, Sophia Augusta Frederica, and eventually she would become Catherine the Great after she dethroned her husband and became the sole ruler of the Russian Empire. So that's the story. And so this estate would be in her hands. It will be one of the Romanov residences. And later, when their only child, I mean, Catherine the Great with Peter III, they only had one child together. This would be future Emperor Paul. So when Paul got married for the second time, Catherine the Great gave him several estates. Pavlovsk, if you may remember that residence, I took you there for about gazillion of tours because it's a huge residence. And she also gave him this palace, which her architect, one of her favorite architects, Felton, rebuilt into classicism, because if you remember, Bestujev-Reuben had it all in a very Baroque style, just like Elizabeth would have liked. Just like Elizabeth liked it, but Catherine hated Baroque, so she hired her best architect to rebuild it into classicism, to her own taste, because she couldn't care less what Paul wanted. As you may remember, Catherine didn't like her son very much because he was a constant reminder of the husband she never loved, or she didn't love at some point she stopped loving him. These things happen. Spark dwindles, but doesn't mean you have to dethrone your spouse and make them disappear, from the face of the earth. She just decided um, to follow a bit of a different script. Nevertheless, so there was built this palace on the stone island, and it's called Kamенно-Ostrovsky Palace on the stone island. And the palace is still there to the right hand side, and there are some buildings that survived the 18th century, right? So second half of the 18th century. This is I would say mid 18th century, which is amazing because, this area underwent a lot of changes. By the way, this is what the road looked in the 1930s. It's just a sand embankment. It was like basically it was like a beach. It was a beach, so it's a very green area, very like village. So there were a lot of changes, a lot of construction, but for some reason, even during the Soviet period, they decided to preserve the building, and it became the kids' educational facility. So, for example, this building, it's one of the orangeries, winter gardens that belong to this residence. I've never been inside. I believe it just rented by different institutions. There used to be, it used to be like a proper Romanov residence, and it was visited very often during the summers in the 19th century by all the Romanovs. It was visited. It was, I would say, because it was the area favorite among so many aristocrats, and Romanovs were part of that. I would say community, so to speak. There are a lot of photographs that I've been able to find. I will also share them with you. But before that, there is one specific street that I want you to see. There is one street that you cannot find on the maps. But if you're there on the site, you can find this very narrow street that goes between these two houses and stretches for about, I don't know, 500 meters. We do it in meters and kilometers, so half a kilometer, like quarter of a mile. And this street is not really registered. There is no street named like this officially. It has a beautiful name. The people from this neighborhood called it the Street of Moon Cats. Улица лунных кошек, the Street of Moon Cats. It even has we are like a street name plaque, but well, the street sign, but it looks like the official one, but it's a little bit different, so it's not the official street. I don't know why exactly the locals, opted for this name. This is the photo from the internet. So this is where the street goes, right between the two buildings, and it goes a little bit deeper into the island. But well, I guess cats in general are symbols of St. Petersburg anyway. But they saved Hermitage from rats. They served well, they saved St. Petersburg from several floods. Well, they helped save people from the floods. I don't know. But the palace is still there. However, it's not the most accessible palace, I should say. During the Soviet period, it was a kids' educational facility, and it is still a kids' educational facility. It's called the Academy of Talents, and it's a municipal facility that I would say provides free of charge hobby clubs, um, activities, research opportunities for the school kids of St. Petersburg. So this place basically nourishes kids' talents. And I think this is a very good venue for an activity like this. And also this place was under restoration for about like 10 years or so, and it reopened only a couple of years ago. It can only be accessed on a group tour, and my colleague attended it. I was so jealous because this is a Romanov residence. This residence was not really the favorite residence of Emperor Paul. Eventually, he moved to Pavlovsk and then to Gachina. You may remember that residence. We did a tour there. Um, but it was loved by his son, Emperor Alexander. This area was loved by Nicholas I. We know Nicholas II also liked Stone Island a lot. So it was always, well, I've always wanted to visit this palace, but I wasn't able to, but my colleague did. So there is a very, very short video of just several rooms that she was able to attend because it's an educational facility. Not all rooms are available for for a visit. And obviously it's done only when the kids are not there. So it's weekends, certain hours at the weekends that you can visit it with a group guided tour. They were able to evacuate a lot of exhibits before the Second World War. And now these exhibits are back. However, the interiors mostly are lost, unfortunately. The palace was quite affected by the siege times, by the Second World War. But the exhibits, a lot of paintings are actually from this place. A lot of some furniture items as well. This is a concert hall and a dance hall, a white hall, the name is, and it has quite an interesting caryatids. You see this statues of the ladies that are kind of popping up from the wall. It's like they're still partly in the walls. They look a little bit creepy to me. Maybe that's just, Halloween vibe that speaks into me already since I've started with my virtual Halloween tours already, maybe. But well, this is also, I know that several times a year, a big ball is held in this room for kids, not for adults, but for school children of St. Petersburg, I guess for the brightest ones. I think so. Um, I think so. I'm not entirely sure, I'm not familiar with it. So, and there, well, this is just one of the, it used to be a dining room, by the way, which was quite natural. So a dining room would be kind of connected with a big dance hall. The interesting story. So a colleague of mine told me, it's not one of the same colleague, but she told me that during the Soviet time she was able to visit this palace for some reason, something related to pioneers or anything. She was like member of this pioneer organization. So she visited the palace and she remembered those cupids or putis, well, looking like pioneers. So they were dressed. They looked like pioneers. I have no idea how they did that. I can't imagine. I haven't been able to find any illustrations. I don't know. So, but that's just I'm saying what my colleague told me. But if it was the case, just imagine how ridiculous it must have looked. Chubby pioneers. I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. So again, as I said, I wouldn't say that the interiors of the palace are fantastic. As you can see, not really, but a little bit of the original decoration has been preserved, restored for us. Well, by the way, this is one of the first glass ceiling constructions you can find in St. Petersburg. So mostly this construction would emerge in the 19th century, but in this palace it was the very beginning of the 19th century, the very beginning of the 19th century. Oh no, sorry, the very end of the 18th century. Yes, that was a big achievement, by the way. It looked different. This is a modern construction, but obviously those are not plasmas that belong to the Romanovs. This is just a lecture room. There are a lot of lectures held there. Uh, some period dresses. I don't know. I don't think they are original. I believe they're just copies of the dresses that used to be worn in the 19th century. I don't know. But so, as I said, there are only several rooms that are available for display, and so we've just visited them. This is a very difficult palace to access, and we visited it together. Well, I haven't been there myself either, so I guess we're even here. But I have been to the park multiple times and I took some photos of the churches that had been built there in the end of the 18th century for Emperor Paul, who was very much into mysticism, very much, he was a Mason. He was, by the way, Grand Master of the Freemasons order and he was very much into all those legends and folklore, so he commissioned to build a church and it was consecrated to John the Baptist, which was highly venerated by the Freemasons. And as you know, also when due to the conflict with Napoleon, Malta, well, let's put it like that. The Malta cross order was well faced big danger. Eventually, Emperor Paul invited them to St. Petersburg and provided them with the headquarters and with the land. And for several years, St. Petersburg became the temporary residence of the Malta Cross Order, basically. So he was the Grand Master of it too. The church looks quite unusual. It's a combination of some, I would say, Middle Eastern vibes mixed, well, I would say quite nicely married with some kind of Gothic features. I would say it's a kind of the very whimsical architecture that Paul liked a lot. He liked all the mysteries. He liked fantasy. Um, I'm sure he would have been a big fan of Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter too. I'm pretty sure. And there are a lot of illustrations. So eventually, as I said, part of the park would remain free, for public visit. The church eventually became it was turned from a private Romanov church into a public church, and a lot of famous Saint Petersburgers prayed in this church, touches even the prominent Russian poet Alexander Pushkin. And speaking of Alexander Pushkin, I think it's a nice promo opportunity because we also skipped the Q&A. I think this is the time we can actually wrap it up, and I will provide you, some kind of extra information with regards to the upcoming tours. The chat is back on. Let me know if you have any questions. For those who joined a little after, I will just put the links again. There's going to be one more tour tonight, and in 20 minutes from now, I'm taking you to Catherine's Palace to see the newly restored interiors, and including the Romanov Church. And tomorrow I'm doing 4 tours. I'm taking you on a live walk with my mom in 19th century area of Tbilisi, explore some new sites that I discovered, like beautiful locations, some history, local vibe, and things like that. Then Misha launches his new series of talks. He has finally done with the Soviet and post-Soviet history. And as both of us, so we are linguists, we're colleagues, we're tour guides, we're linguists, and also we've studied a lot of anthropology. So Misha, for a long time, has been dreaming to do a series of talks on Russian folklore, Russian tales, Russian literature, and how it, I would say, portrays national character, worldview, local legends, local mythology, and lore. So he will be doing a special talk on Alexander Pushkin, Russian poet number one, like Russian Byron, basically the same Romantism movement in literature, just like Byron. And in that church that where we wrap this up, there's going to be, thank you, Jan, thank you. I find it interesting too. I'm a little bit tired from the Soviets. I need some break. I need some break. So fairy tale would be a very good change, a little breather. I wouldn't hurt. Alexander Pushkin actually prayed in that church multiple times and is believed to be the last church he visited before his duel, at which he was killed in 1837. Interesting, right? Hmm. Yeah. So, but that's going to, Misha will be talking about Pushkin in a couple of episodes, I believe, because that's just how it goes, I would say, in his, understanding. Then tomorrow, I'm hopefully wrapping up with Leon Theremin, the inventor of the theremin musical instrument, and I'm taking you the Holy Sepulchre Church in Jerusalem. That's basically the plan. And in, well, 15 minutes from now, I'll be happy to see you in Catherine's Palace, in the Romanovs Church, and the newly restored interiors and the rooms that are normally, I would say, rarely visited by the tourists. So kind of also another off-beaten area or less studied area of Catherine's Palace, the one with the amber room, but that's totally like the opposite direction of the from the amber room. Let me know if you have any other questions in the meantime. So this has been recorded, and I will be sharing the recordings around these days. If you missed my birthday cooking class with my mom, we cooked one of my favorite comfort foods. The recording is already on my YouTube channel. The first link on the chat is exactly that birthday cooking tour. We're just keeping up with this tradition of me and my mom cooking together for my birthday. Thank you everyone for the birthday wishes. You've really made me feel very special. It's very sweet to still be getting those greetings. Thank you so much for this. I would appreciate your support. You can send me PayPal donation. You could buy me coffee. I would appreciate that. And I will be scheduling the next episode for, Elegant Curves of St. Petersburg to take you to well, trust me, Stone Island is full of Art Nouveau masterpieces, like small cottages and big mansions that belong to aristocrats. Well, it's incredible. It's like, oh, well, I will be scheduling this shortly, but next week is going to be a little different because there are going to be a lot of Art Nouveau, well, not Art Nouveau, Halloween themed tours. So I will be definitely doing a live walk in Tbilisi with a lot of scary, spooky stories. Most of them are real, by the way. That looks even scarier to me. Then I will be taking you to a Jewish cemetery for sure. Maybe one more cemetery with some more spooky stories. I know not everyone likes cemeteries, but I think Halloween is the perfect time. Actually, and that's a good enough excuse to take you to the cemetery for a tour, right? And also, I'm looking into, not looking to, um, providing like opening access to my last year Halloween tours, such as Museum of Burial Practices in my hometown and many other, stories. So I'll see if, well, let me know if you're interested because my sponsors have access to these tours. Uh, there are like 850 tours now, I believe, on that secret playlist. But from time to time, an open access to some selected tours just to kind of, bring them back to life because otherwise they just piled up there and forgotten. So we'll see. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. It's been fun. So I'll see you in 15 minutes in St. Petersburg and then on 4 tours tomorrow. And by the way, tomorrow, I think it's going to be either the last or one of the last virtual tours with my mom this time because she will be leaving end of next week, which is very sad. So we'll see if we can, cook up something else. But tomorrow for sure, she will be joining me in the streets of Tbilisi, which she has been enjoying very much. Thank you everyone for making this weekend very special. I will see you soon. Bye bye. Thank you, Gregory. Thank you, everyone.